Good morning, everyone.
Morning, everyone. Oh, wow. Some people need some coffee.
So, interesting topic today. How to reduce the carbon footprint using sustainable technology. Uh, First off, let's start with introducing ourselves. You can go first.
Sure. I'm Mohamed Eissa. I am the CEO of IDS International. We are a business process outsourcing company, and we have this holistic approach towards the BPO, whereas we cover the call centers, back office services, content moderation, IT outsourcing, and quite a diverse offering when it comes to that. We operate from Egypt, UAE, and KSA. So Middle East is our background. And when it comes to the sustainability, this is a very hot topic when it comes to, the location specifically here in UAE and specifically in Dubai, and obviously in Saudi Arabia, that they're following the footsteps of UAE, right? And
Thank you,
back
Mohamed.
to you.
My name is Arun Kumar. I own two companies, one in India and one in Ras Al Khaimah. ESG is a part of our requirements, which is related to our topic, what we are speaking right now. So that's why I've agreed to be on the panel this week, because it is of some interest to me also. So let's start off. From where we are currently. Okay, we are in Dubai, and Dubai is one of the cities that is in the forefront of adopting regulations that help the climate. Okay, what do you think, Mohammed? How is Dubai doing this?
Oh, wow. I think on all fronts, Dubai is actually at the front lines, right? They're very quick to jump on all opportunities when it comes to carbon footprint, and the savings when it comes to sustainability. I mean, think about it. They were among the leaders or the first movers when it came to, for example, smart buildings, when it came to administrative buildings, smart homes, all the technology that has been developed across the world, right? They were among the first movers or first adopters when it came to that. When you look at the various industries and sectors, you look at the airlines, for example, right? And they have all these initiatives towards, the fleets being reducing carbon footprint and so on and so forth. So when electric vehicles, for example, as you've rightfully mentioned earlier today, when it comes to that, I mean, they're on all fronts. They are ensuring that they have steps that are taken,
Correct.
right? And then there are also all the regulations and all the guidelines towards being a more sustainable company or a sustainable team and so on and so forth. So that's very interesting, because they set sort of a roadmap for the entire region when it comes to sustainability, right?
Right.
And then
exactly.
that then gives into the picture of the ESG, which we were discussing earlier,
Correct.
which is environmental, social and
Corporate governance.
corporate governance. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So one interesting thing I also noted, even in Holiday Inn, they have put refillable bottles instead of plastic water bottles. Okay. So we are actually seeing this in practice. Okay. That's a very good thing. Now, how does technology help us? We need to use more material that is environment friendly. For example, here the glass is being used instead of plastic bottles, so refillable glass, right? That's one way. We see that the governments play a major role in framing laws and giving directions to the corporates. But what I think is these laws and all, they are actually compartmentalized to certain industries. Like for example, if I take water purification, okay, so and you want to set up a dyeing industry. Now, the dyeing industry needs to strictly follow their waste management. Okay, so there is a law which states until you have a proper waste management, you cannot get the license for it. So in India, this is one of the mandatory requirements. Okay, and also with respect to electric vehicles, right? What are your thoughts on electric vehicles that are coming up, and how do you think they help us?
See, I think that all the initiatives that are being taken, whether it is from the private sector or public sector, are very nice. But then I really think that the issue here is not the steps that are being taken by the governments or by the corporates, you know, on a very high level, but in the bigger scheme of things, how are they being implemented, you know, down the hierarchy with the frontliners, right?
Correct.
So that is the actual issue that we need to focus about, because generally speaking, if you come to think about it, really, you put all these guidelines, you have all these steps that need to be taken, and you have all these asks as governments and corporates and so on and so forth. But how are they really implemented down the line when it comes to the hierarchy, right? Because, okay, you have the electric vehicles, very nice, all right, cool. I'm going to drive an electric vehicle instead of a diesel one or petrol one, which is very sustainable, right, when it comes to the environment. But then there are so many aspects that come into the picture when you talk about sustainability, and it's really these very, very small actions. And you rightfully mentioned, for example, the water bottles, the glass ones that are reusable. How many are actually using this? And it's available in Dubai, you know, quite frequently you walk into any stores, you find those, right?
Correct.
But how many are being used? How many people are using this, right? So that's a very important aspect that we need to tap into when it comes to sustainability as a topic, right?
Correct.
It's the education of the masses.
The society, correct.
Yeah.
Society is a very important contributor. Nothing can be done without a common man's help, especially in the area of ESG. So when we think about ESG and all, we think it's only a corporate social responsibility. But ESG is actually should be adopted in a very broad sense. It should be incorporated in the law of the land. So which affect the common people, so that people can start contributing towards it.
True.
Right.
True.
One of the things with relation to technology, adopting common standards. For example, in Europe, you know, Apple was manufacturing the phone for wireless charging, and they made USB Type-C, the European Union, they made USB Type-C as a standard, which should be mandatorily present in all the smartphones. And India is adopting a similar standard. So standardization of technology components, I think that will really help in reducing the carbon footprint. Because when you use a phone charger, for example, you've got many options right now. You've got USB A, B, C. You've got the normal ring chargers that we see, and you've got the wireless chargers. So when you have a particular type of standard that you make it mandatory, I think that goes a long way.
Right. Right. Very true. As a matter of fact, I mean, if you come to think about it, in my industry, we have a lot of components that come into the services, right? And one of the major ones is the data centers, right?
Correct.
And then I always get these reports from our IT guys, and they always, you know, they want more investments in the data centers. And up until recently, I just never understood why exactly are we investing in data centers if we already have data centers, right? Like, why are we buying all these equipment and so on and so forth? So one of the reports that the director of infrastructure came up with, and he sent it to me, was, yeah, that this new technology helps reduce the carbon footprint, right?
Correct.
And it helps reduce the electric consumption, and it helps reduce. So all these reductions, right, and all these enhancements in the technology that, you know, day by day, it's becoming exponential.
Yep. Yep.
And these are directly affecting the sustainability, right, on the bigger scheme of things, right?
Agreed.
So, I mean, we're only operating like, what, 2,000 people? But I mean, even on our small scale size, right, that is, and I think that is small scale size, but that is very important because apparently, you know, our footprint is being reduced significantly. Right?
Correct. Agreed.
So even when it comes to the technology aspect, and you mentioning Apple, I mean, all the chips that they're developing now, right? The M1 and the M2, if you come to think about it, they're taking that into consideration and reducing the carbon footprint, and with all the electricity consumption or the power consumption of these chips and so on and so forth, and the output is greater but with less damage to the environment, right? But then the question lies here. I mean, if I'm going to change my phone every single year because I mean I'm enhancing the technology, then what happens to the sustainability in the bigger picture?
Correct.
Right? So that's sort of like a dilemma here, or a paradox, right?
Yep. Since you mentioned data center, and data center operations is one of my specialty. Okay.
Right.
I have seen a lot of improvement in the way data centers have been built. Okay. Especially with the reduction in the real estate of data centers. Okay. So earlier we used to use physical routers, switches, firewalls. Okay. Now, and I work with the major some of the major service providers, top 5 service providers in the world. Okay, what I see now is you just buy servers and switches. That's it, and you have got a DC interconnect between 2 data centers. So imagine having 100 routers and switches, all combined into 5 or 6 servers, connected by switches in a spine leaf topology.
But then I have a question for you. I mean, is that really helping towards the sustainability? Because at the end of the day, you're completely right on that. And we are reducing the physical assets that are within the data centers. But then you're connecting to a cloud data center that is somewhere else.
Correct.
Investing largely into these components, right? Consuming more power for computing and for internet bandwidth and so on and so forth, and the capacity and so on and so forth. So is it are we really helping towards sustainability, or are we just shifting the problem somewhere else?
We're definitely helping. So I mentioned that, right, 100 routers can be compressed in 6 to 8 servers. So all virtualized. All routers virtualized in a single rack.
Right.
So instead of having multiple racks, instead of having customers having racks in their own data center. So let's say I've got a multi-tenant setup where if I'm a service provider, I have a data center for customer A, B, C. So each have their own racks. I'm removing all the racks and combining them into one single rack. So automatically, electricity is saved. The cooling, which produces greenhouse gases, that is saved. So virtualization, I can really tell that this has largely helped to reduce the carbon footprint. Okay.
Right.
So people adopting more virtualization and cloud technologies, they see an immediate benefit, cost benefit, and there is an environmental benefit.
Right. Okay, well, do you think that it is still an early stage, whereas governments should step in with some very firm regulations when it comes to sustainability? Because again, back to the the statement of that we take all these initiatives on a larger scale, on the bigger scheme of things, and it's very nice, but down the hierarchy, the education level of sustainability hasn't really matured yet, right?
Correct.
And so, in order to sort of force the education of the masses, do you think that it is the time to step in as governments and put certain firm regulations to ensure that kind of sustainability?
Yeah, definitely. Education is the most important factor in sustainability, and education should be ideally about reducing carbon footprints and about the environment. I think it needs to be a separate subject that should be taught in the primary schools as well. How can technology reduce, so that you can influence young minds to think in that direction right from the early age. It's a global responsibility, and we cannot just say we have got a ESG process for corporates, and we check boxes 1, 2, 3, 4, and do everything, and then we say we have done our corporate social responsibility for the environment, for the society and the world, and we are done. So it doesn't stop there. So it's a continuous process, and education plays a very pivotal role in that aspect.
Right,
Yes,
right. And how do the large corporations, the large multinational corporations, fit into the picture? Like, what do you think should be done? I mean, whether actually, no, I take that back, scratch that. Multinationals, generally speaking, whether they're large or small scale, right? How do they add to the picture, or what more steps can we take to give back to that sustainable cause or sustainability cause?
So, me as a, if I say me as a corporate, I will have to adopt virtualization technologies.
Right.
That's one way I can do it. I can ensure that green practices are taken in my regular day-to-day life. For example, I can give ceramic mugs to my employees, for example, for taking coffee. I can stop putting plastic cups in my office. So I can reduce the tissue paper, for example. And we know that the amount of tissue paper, right, what we use, right, it's enormous. Okay, and so taking these small steps really helps in reducing the global carbon footprint, and that's where I can say corporates can do their bit.
Well, you said something very interesting that I noted, and I think I'm going to have a very interesting discussion with my director of infrastructure regarding the virtualization, just to make sure that we're on the right track. And thank you very much for that. Thank you.
Okay.
And thank you for your time, everyone.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone. Any questions want to ask?
Sure.
Yes, please. I heard software-defined networks. Oh, what was the other one? Software-defined data centers, SDDC. Okay. So SDN, or software-defined networking, is actually a generic term where you use software for virtualizing your network functions. Okay. When you say software-defined data center, it's software-defined networking, but it's more compartmentalized to data center operations. Okay. So, for example, as I had already told, right, you have many servers. Okay. So you have used the cloud technologies using a certain orchestration, and then you write the scripts in those. So, for example, you can use Ansible, which is used for infrastructure as a code. So when you use such programming languages, you're actually speaking about software-defined data centers, IaaC. Okay. Software-defined networking, you have got a different architecture itself. So you speak about a northbound interface and a southbound interface. Okay. So northbound interface will be your application, southbound interface will be your underlay, your router switches and all. So this is a basic difference, and I think they overlap with each other, because ultimately data centers are meant for networking. Okay. So in some functions, they overlap with each other. Does it answer your question? Okay.
Hello. Yeah, I'm just looking at the statement there which says supporting environment and reducing carbon footprints, right? Mm-hmm. So my question is, are we, doing a catch-up game today in terms of whatever, things have destroyed the environment or causing harm to the environment? We are now are in a more reactive mode, trying to do a catch-up game. Right? Mm-hmm. That is question number one. Question number two is, how can regulations or proactive support from the government in terms of ensuring that harmful technologies or technologies which are detrimental to the environment are not released to the general public in any industry, as an example?
Do you want to take the question?
I think both questions are related to each other, right? And yes, we have been, unfortunately, reactive in the bigger scheme of things, not proactive. And only when things started to deteriorate, we started stepping into the picture and saying, hey, we need to do something about that. So that's the answer to your first question. Second question is, I think, or I believe, that nowadays there are certain regulations, at least in the countries that are trying to, either first world countries obviously, and the countries like UAE that are trying to catch up, you know, and be leaders in that sort of sense. And there are regulations that I hear about and read about across the various sectors, whereas, you know, there has to be some sort of approval, for example, in testing certain technologies before they come out, right? But then the essence of, and this was, you know, maybe not tapped into in more details in our discussion, but the essence of the topic here is that it's not just that we need to have guidelines, and the regulations here are sort of guidelines for the approvals, right? So I think that we need to take deeper steps into assigning, you know, committees or laws, or even, you know, more enhanced regulations, in order to ensure that not just that we have guidelines, but that, as you know, you rightfully said, that no, we need to stop these harmful technologies, right? Or before they come out to the public, they need to be tested in terms of, you know, having these minimum standards of acceptable carbon footprints and so on and so forth. I mean, and the technology is rapidly growing, right? And then being enhanced. Whereas you hear about, again, as I've said earlier, in the airlines industry, for example, you see all these fleets that are coming out right now, and all the reports, you know, the shiny reports and the shiny numbers and figures that say, oh, we reduced our carbon footprint by X, Y, and Z, right? Well then, once that happens, I think that should be set as the minimum standard for the industry, whereas everyone has to follow quickly, right? So then, yes, this will take a lot of investment from the companies, but then it is an essential act that we need to do in order to be proactive, as you've rightfully mentioned, so that we do not continue being reactive.
Correct. Agreed.
Yes, please.
Yes, please.
Yes. Hi. Do you feel, as a follow-up to that, because I also think that we could be a bit stronger, that we could have a more sort of carrot and stick kind of system when it comes to advancing technologies that do good? For example, now in areas where we are still using natural resources, where there are now autonomous vehicles or electric vehicles available, that we should give incentive to, I mean, in Dubai you have already free charging your Tesla, for example, but to go a step further into taxing petrol cars and incentivizing, for example, electric vehicles as part of not just an incentive, but maybe a stronger mandate. Yeah.
You know, you're absolutely right, 100%. But in order to step into that, you know, scene and say, okay, we're going to have stronger mandates, I believe that we have to ensure that the infrastructure is ready, right? Because, I mean, if you're going to harm the environment as a government, you know, why not make money out of it? You know, just tax the people, right? And make sure that, you know, you're incentivizing them or pushing them into a certain direction, whereas you are moving towards sustainability. But then the infrastructure has to be, you know, very mature and ready for that sort of thing, because otherwise then you're just going to be forcing the people to pay money, but they're not ready with the infrastructure. Maybe UAE maybe is ready with that, but then you're talking about the global scheme of things, right? So if you look at the big picture here, not everyone is ready, not every country is ready. I mean, if you look in the Middle East, okay, so UAE is taking all these initiatives, cool. KSA is taking all these initiatives, cool. But then what other countries are in the region that are ready for such, you know, mandates? So it's very important that you look at the infrastructure first and the investments that need to be done. So government could incentivize the companies to invest in the infrastructure first before pushing the masses into a certain direction, right? But you're 100% right. I mean, incentivizing the companies, you know, for the products and services, and also the masses to be pushed into that direction is something that is very essential for sustainability. Yeah. But it's how we're going to do it that is the question here.
Yeah. Agreed. Yeah, yeah. And I think we need to. I feel as I'm working for a PIF entity, so semi-government, and I feel that we have we do have a duty to lead by example. You're saying, indeed, not every country is ready, but I think the examples of KSA and UAE paving the way and leading by example is very critical to that. And I think we could maybe arguably be a bit tougher in both sides of the spectrum, meaning positive change, incentivize it, fund it, make it top of the agenda, communicate, invest also in communication about it. And then on the flip side of it, tax or penalize pollution, conventional misuse or use of natural resources.
100%. And
Correct. So there are two aspects which you spoke. One is incentivizing, and another one is making it a mandate. By speaking about penalizing, right? So I can give one example in India, where if you use solar panels for electricity, okay, the government gives you a rebate. Okay, that's one part. But not only that, you can, if you have extra power, you can sell that to the government. Right? So you are incentivizing and you are also motivating. You can do both. And clean technologies, they have the power. Solar power is unlimited, right? So make the developers here, because Dubai, it's big in real estate. So incentivize the developers for bringing in solar technology, and then if they have excess power, motivate them to sell it to others. Maybe a developer with a big building who has installed a good amount of solar energy, they can sell that energy to the smaller villas. So you get a share, the government gets its share. The government, the person who has invested in that infrastructure, he also gets a share. It's a win-win situation for both, right? And mandate, yes, mandates are important, because when a vehicle with a for example, a diesel or a petrol vehicle, okay, it crosses a certain age, it starts some more pollution. I think those vehicles need to be taken off the road. Okay, so you need to have a proper guideline and proper checks that these vehicles are off the road. Dubai has a very good infrastructure with respect to traffic cameras. So you can capture the number plates live, and then you can send it to an AI to analyze which vehicles have crossed the 10-year mark or 15-year mark. So I think in that aspect, I love the Dubai very much. Okay, and thank you for that question.
any other questions? Yes, please.
Yes, please.
Okay. I'm Alex, software engineer. So you remind how we
Can you
save
bring the mic a little bit closer?
a bit closer? Okay. So I'm a software engineer. As you mentioned, where we can save some energy. So as a reminder, as you mentioned, scripts and data center management, when it comes to software, it's like a car with RPM. If you use proper programming, you use less.
Do we use what?
Code, planning the code.
RPM is a car machine engine. You want to drive fast, use high RPM, high frequency, a lot of programming, cycles. So with proper programming, what I mean, if it's to use Python as for management.
I'm very sorry.
I'm sorry,
I can't hear you.
Hear the question, please.
Yeah.
Closer, okay. Sorry. So it's all about the point of proper programming for the ecosystem. As far as it goes, proper, less energy consuming. If we speak of Python instead of C, for example, it's much less of CPU frequency, so it's huge amount of energy.
Correct.
Yes.
I agree.
That's about all. It's not
I
a
agree.
question, actually, just a suggestion.
Okay, I agree with you, because my basic degree is in computer engineering. So I have written programs. There's an interesting concept in software programming called as time and space complexity. So if you are a programmer, you'll know what it means. So time complexity means you have to execute your code in using lesser CPU cycles in lesser amount of time. Space complexity is using lesser number of storage resources, whether it's RAM or the hard disk. Okay, So this, so software, the contribution that software programmers can make when writing code is to keep these two things in factor. So your applications make use of lesser resources. So if you are saving in storage, like if your application is generating too much of storage, it's taking too much of storage space, generating so much data. So look at if you can reduce that, if you can reduce the data sets and have the same kind of output. So that way you save storage space, automatically you have a lesser, a smaller server with the lesser specifications, right? And yes, that indirectly helps in reducing. A very good example. Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions? No? Okay. Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks everyone.
Aaron, it was a pleasure.
My pleasure. Thank you.